What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Thursday, April 17th. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, I'm going to get into the ultimate Limitless guide slash future planning episode. I've got about 20 slides. Could be a long one. I'm going to try and keep it short. Shout out to all the F1 Fantasy content creators out there that can keep their episodes under 20-25 minutes. I think that is the hardest thing that I have been doing this season because there is so much to talk about. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. If you are enjoying the channel, give it a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Any support is greatly appreciated. But like I said, tons of slides. So we're just going to get right into it here, talking about the Limitless guide. There's going to be 3 topics I hit today: how to plan around the Limitless chip, how teams will look before and after the chip, and then races to target playing the Limitless chip. There'll be timestamps in the description below. I know there is so much content this week, so much fantastic content, and I'm going to get to at the end of this episode. So if you can't watch the entire episode, jump around in the timestamps, give it a like, leave me a comment, and I can get to it after that. But how to plan around the Limitless chip, 3 kind of topics in this topic. Is your squad primed to build budget? Will your Limitless team gain you points on the field? And is there an established pecking order? Those are the kind of things you want to talk about, think about before activating that Limitless chip. So is your squad primed to build budget? Now there's some drivers here that I just took for like a random sampling: Verstappen, Russell, Albon, Gasly, Behrman, Alonso. These are some drivers that are in our thoughts, some are in our team, some are in our future thoughts kind of thing. So I've got the Bahrain points, their points per race for the season, the points needed for a minimum price rise, and the points needed for a maximum price rise this weekend in Saudi Arabia. Verstappen here scored 22 points in Bahrain. His points per race on the season is 29.3. He needs 20 points for a minimum price rise, so you feel pretty good about getting a 0.1 locked in, but 46 points for a max price rise. That probably takes him off the table for us. However, Russell here, 31 points in Bahrain, 27.3 points per race over the 2025 F1 fantasy season, 11 points for minimum price rise. You feel pretty good about that as well, but 31 points. He got 31 points in Bahrain, so we can't say that he won't get the max price rise of 0.3, but it's a little iffy. Saudi Arabia, low overtake track. Will Mercedes run well here? Ferrari's looking okay after their Sunday running in Bahrain, so there could be a little bit more competition for that final podium spot with Russell. Albon here, 15 points in Bahrain, 12.8 points per race on the season, needs 12 points for a minimum price rise. So Albon could be looking at another fall this week, and 24 points for a max price rise. So these are the assets that you need to think about. Gasly's in a lot of our future plans here, scored 13 points in Bahrain, 6.5 points per race on the season if we don't include the disqualification. Just bear with me, there's some loosey-goosey, patented trademark math on F1 Fantasy Pole Position. 13 points for a minimum price rise, 21 for a maximum price rise. So probably don't feel great about Gasly getting a price rise this week, but as we'll look at later in the episode, it could be in our future thoughts for Miami and beyond. Behrman here scored 22 points, averaging 12 points per race, needs -4 points for a minimum price rise, 3 points for a maximum price rise. So if you have him in your squad and you're playing Limitless this weekend, or even if you're going to play Limitless in Miami, you can feel really good about having Ollie Behrman in your squad. Fernando Alonso also here, 5 points in Bahrain, 3.3 points per race on the season when he doesn't DNF, which is in 2 of the 4 races. Needs 9 points for a minimum price rise, but 15 points for a maximum price rise. Has had a pretty good history at Saudi Arabia over the last couple of seasons here, so that gives me a little bit of hope. However, 9 million might be a little bit too much. However, probably only going to drop the minimum amount of price this week, so it is an option for future planning people. Maybe if I'm like committed to playing Limitless in Miami, Alonso isn't the worst transfer in the world. But gaining points on the field, I talked about this in my team selection. Now, Formula Fantasy Hub Rob actually had like a fantastic breakdown of this, so go check out his channel, his video, his Limitless guide. Very similar to this, but his was like far more scientific and accurate. So my chart I've got on the screen here, if you listen on the podcast side, I've got Saudi Arabia, Miami, and Imola. I've got their overtakes, I got their DNFs, their 2024 Limitless score that I was going off of, like the F1.com practice debrief data, and then my 2024 score from my T1 team there. So in Saudi Arabia, 19th out of 24 tracks for overtakes this season, 3.3 DNFs per race over the last 3 seasons. In 2024, the Limitless score here would have been 309 points, just based on some like going off of what the vibes were from F1.com practice debrief. And my T1 team scored 154 points. So as you can see here, that's a huge delta from my T1 squad to my Limitless score. Miami here, 8th for overtakes out of the 24 tracks on the calendar this year. 5 DNFs over the last 3 seasons. 314 points would have been the Limitless score based off the mini vibes that I'm going off of. But my T1 team anyway scored 258 points. So while that Limitless team did outscore the Saudi Arabia Limitless team, the gap between my T1 squad to the Limitless team was almost 100 points smaller, if not more. And then Imola here, it's had 2 races in the last 3 seasons because it was rained out in 2023. Second worst for overtakes on the calendar, 3 DNFs over the last 3 seasons. 299 points would have been the Limitless score. 211 was my T1 squad. So as you can see here, Saudi Arabia had the biggest delta. I do think I had a DNF in there, so it's a little bit skewed for the T1 score. But these are the things you need to think about. Gaining points on the field. It's not just about scoring the most points. It's about gaining the most points on the field. Rob had a fantastic breakdown saying like 90 points was ideal, and that's what happened in Japan just a couple of races ago. A lot of the Limitless teams gained 99 points on the field. That is huge. So great job by y'all if you played the Limitless chip in Japan. But we've got something to think about here. Saudi Arabia, Miami, Imola, Monaco. These next 4 races are all okay options, pretty good options to play your Limitless chip. But we're going to keep breaking this down in the episode. Like I said, you can like the channel, subscribe to the channel, or like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that fun stuff. So hopefully you're enjoying the content here. Next up is the pecking order. So it's also something when it comes to Limitless is we want to be fairly certain of the top 5 drivers, the top 2 teams. And right now, I'm not entirely sure. The locks are Piastri, Lando, McLaren. That's 3 of your 7 assets, locked and loaded, all done, good to go. Next up, though, is the up for debate guys. Leclerc, Russell, Verstappen, Hamilton, Ferrari, Mercedes. I don't think Red Bull is an option right now unless they come super firing out of the gates in Saudi Arabia and in Miami, really, just with Tsunoda catching up to that car. And a part of the reason I'm apprehensive about playing the Limitless in Saudi Arabia this week is it just doesn't really sit right with me to not have Max Verstappen in a Limitless squad. That seems a little cuckoo for me. And Russell looks great. Ferrari showed a little bit of pace on Sunday. I'm interested to see how they go around Saudi Arabia. So the pecking order isn't locked in. And with more information, more races, we will get more info. It'll be like you'll be able to kind of, like I said, determine the pecking order of who is the top 5 drivers, who's the top 2 teams, that sort of stuff. If Ferrari gets back on the board, they kind of leapfrog Mercedes as the second best constructor in the game right now. That makes me feel a little bit better. But if they prove that in Saudi Arabia, it could be in Miami or Imola. It looks like, oh, Ferrari are back on it. They're like starting to challenge McLaren for wins and stuff like that. That is where it becomes more tempting to play the Limitless chip. Before and after the Limitless, so you get a lot of questions here. So when you're playing, get a lot of questions about the Limitless chip and how it kind of affects the game, how it operates when you activate it. So when playing Limitless, your team from the previous race grows budget. So if you activate Limitless in Saudi Arabia, that team that you had in Bahrain at lineup lock, that is the team that grows budget. And your Limitless team that you select is the one that scores points. In the following race, which will be Miami for us, you will come out the other side of this Limitless chip with 2 free transfers, and then the team from Bahrain will be the team that you have in Miami. You don't carry over your Limitless chip from Saudi Arabia. So the Bahrain team will grow you budget in Saudi Arabia, and that will be the team you have in Miami. Saudi Arabia is just kind of locked in a vacuum. It scores you points. It doesn't score you budget, or it doesn't grow your budget. And that's where you need to think about how you're setting up your team before and after the Limitless chip. So what I've done here is I've taken my T1 squad, my T2 or my T3 squad here. They are pretty similar, but they have a little, like, I've got Russell instead of Ocon and Mercedes instead of Haas. And I just want to look at how they're going to do, how they've done, and how I'm predicting they will do in Saudi Arabia, and how that will look out the other side of Miami. So here's the T1 squad: Piastri, Ocon, Behrman, Doohan, Hadjar, McLaren, Mercedes. If you listen on the podcast side, it's a lot of information on this table. So I'd highly recommend coming over to the YouTube channel, F1 Fantasy Pole Position, to look at this. So Piastri here, I'm predicting a 0.3 price rise for him in Saudi Arabia. He's averaging 31 points per race this season. He needs 16 for a max price rise. McLaren's looking on it. Even if he has like a third place, fourth place finish, he should easily get to that price rise. Ocon averaging 12 points per race this season. 18 points needed for a price rise, 10 points needed for a minimum price rise. So I'm actually predicting that he goes down 0.2 in Saudi Arabia. Behrman needs 3 points. I'm giving him a max price rise. Doohan needs 8 points for a minimum price rise. So I'm giving him a price fall of 0.2 million. So he'll go down from 5.6 back to 5.4. Hadjar needs 1 point for minimum price rise, 6 points for maximum price rise. I'm just being a little conservative on this one. I'm giving him a minimum price rise to 5.3. McLaren, I'm giving a max price rise, and Mercedes, I'm giving a max price rise. So that's the T1 squad. T2 is a little bit different. Like I said, I've got Piastri going up max, Behrman going up max, Hadjar going up minimum, McLaren going up max. I've got Haas here, 9.4 million. I'm predicting they need to score negative 16 points for a max price rise in Saudi Arabia. So barring any DNFs, they will go up a max price rise as well. And then Russell, he needs 31 points for a max price rise. So for this exercise, I'm being conservative. I'm just going to give him the minimum price rise of 0.1 for an A tier asset. So he'll be 22.1 million. So then when you compare these two squads, right now, heading into Saudi Arabia, my T1 squad is 106.4 million. The T2 squad is 104.6 million. The points per race, T1 squad is kind of beating that because it's got the two AA constructors, 202.5 points per race this season compared to T2, which is 182.6 points per race. In Miami, the T1 squad will be 107.7 million. T2 squad will be 106.5. So in Saudi Arabia, the T1 squad is actually only going to gain 1.3 million, and the T2 squad will likely gain 1.9 million. So this is kind of like the two versions of the template that a lot of people are dealing with. So you just have to think about this. Go into F1 Fantasy Tools Budget Builder. Look at the predicted price rises whenever we get that data on Friday, Saturday, and just kind of judge up, is this how you want to set up your team for Limitless? If you activate it this week, are you going to be happy with a 1.3 million price rise? Are you going to be happy with a 1.9 million price rise? That's what you need to look at as some kind of future planning for Saudi Arabia. I know it's super tempting to just hit the red button and be like, I'm going to score a boatload of points this weekend and I'll deal with it after. However, if we're going for the long-term gain, the future planning, which is the entire point of this episode, you do need to think about this a little bit more. So how do we think about that a little bit more, like even longer term than just what happens in Saudi Arabia? Well, thanks to Pat on the F1 Fantasy Tools Discord, he has made these fantastic tables. Thank you for letting me share these, Pat. I think it's going to really help the F1 Fantasy community on all the viewers on the channel. So let it be known in the comments if you appreciate Pat for doing this. So he kind of like parses out the future for every driver on the grid, every constructor on the grid, but I'm just hitting a couple of them here. So Ocon right now, he needs 18 points for a max price rise in Saudi Arabia. If he gets that, he needs 3 points in Miami for a max price rise. However, like I said, I don't think he's going to get the max price rise. I gave him a minimum price rise, or I gave him a fall. So then he's going to need 17 points in Miami here. As you can see, like adjusting the points that he needs in Saudi Arabia will affect how it works in Miami in the next column. And he even goes out to Imola. So you can see over the next 2 or 3 races how all of these drivers are doing. So Ocon, while he might fall this weekend, 10 points is kind of a lot for a low overtake track like Saudi. I also think that he's still a good hold. As you can see here, even if he gets 10 points this week or 9 points, he'll need like 10, 11, 12 points in Miami, which is like quite easy to get. And then Imola, who knows, 17 points needed for a great price rise, but it's still a positive outcome for Ocon. So I think he's still a good hold in F1 Fantasy. Moving over to his teammate, Ollie Behrman, as you can see here, 3 points in Saudi Arabia is what he needs for a great price increase. 6 points he'll then need in Miami. But that's only if he hits 3 points. Like, say Behrman comes in with 8, 9, 10 points. Like, Miami's going to go down. Say he comes in with another 15-point performance in a sprint. He scored over 20 points in China. He scored over 20 points last weekend. So Imola is also going to make him a pretty good asset as well. So he keeps scoring at this rate, he's going to continue to rise. So Ollie Behrman, excellent hold in F1 Fantasy. I wouldn't worry about him at all, whatever kind of chip strategy you are on over the next few weeks. Gasly here, however, is a little bit more interesting. Needs 13 points for a good price rise this week. However, if he gets like double digits, if he has between 6, 7, 8 points, I think it's more than viable that he rises in Miami afterwards. And we'll see how Alpine looks, because they looked pretty good in preseason testing at Bahrain, and then they had their best race of the season at Bahrain as well. It's been suggested that they just have a small operating window to kind of make that car go vroom well, and they need to kind of nail that every weekend, which makes it more difficult for these teams to score points and optimize every weekend. So I kind of like Gasly as a long-term option. I don't think I'm going to get him in Saudi, but say he has a surprising weekend in Jeddah, he will be a priority transfer for me in Miami. And that's why right now I've had the team selection video come out on Tuesday, and it's a couple days later now, and I'm still thinking that doing to like an Alonso or a Bortoleto and then roll the free transfer into Miami. That's kind of where my team selection thoughts are at as of 8:02 on Thursday morning. Another driver here is Alonso, just talking about him. Probably not going to rise, but not going to get the max price fall this weekend. And then but he has a good history in Saudi Arabia. And then in Miami, it's a sprint weekend. The only thing I have about Alonso, I really want Alonso. I feel like I've been talking about Alonso for like 3 or 4 weeks now, like since the second DNF in China. I was like, we're going to target him. We're going to get him. But that Aston Martin just looks pretty miserable right now. So I want to see more from him. If he has a good weekend in Saudi Arabia, I may take a punt on him if he looks good in practice, if it's just Alonso doing Alonso things, and then just bank on maybe taking a small hit this week, but then a rise in Miami. That could be an okay, like, long-term strategy. That could make it a little bit easier for me to play Limitless in Miami. Like, if he has a good weekend here, then I'll be able to activate Limitless in Miami without worrying about Fernando Alonso taking a bigger price dive. Races to target play in the Limitless chip: sprint weekends, low overtake tracks, and when the meta shifts. So this is another, there's been so much good content out there. I'm going to get into it at the end, but seriously, just take an hour, a couple of hours over the next few days and just check out all of the F1 Fantasy content creators stuff, because it is fantastic. It's very good. It helps me just think through my thoughts as well, just hearing different ideas and breaking it all down. So sprint weekends, low overtake tracks, and when the meta shifts. Those are the races to target play in the Limitless chip. However, we can get a little bit more future planning-y with these. So Miami, Belgium, Austin, Brazil, Qatar, those are the remaining sprint weekends, races 6, 13, 19, 21, and 23. But when you're playing the Limitless chip, obviously you want to be coming off the back of some budget gains or be able to predict some easy budget gains as well. So for Miami in race 6, we've got Bahrain, where a lot of people scored a lot of points, but Saudi Arabia may be some Japanese Grand Prix kind of F1 fantasy scores. So we have to watch out for that when we play our Limitless in Miami. That might be weighing down our average. However, in Belgium, we've got Austria, which is okay, and then Silverstone, which is actually kind of a low overtake track as well. So we got to think about that. But then for Austin, like, this is really late in the season, and I don't think a lot of us will be playing our Limitless or even have our Limitless chip at this time. But Austin has Azerbaijan and Singapore. Those are probably going to be two low scoring tracks, especially Singapore. That'll be like start to finish, probably how they qualify. Brazil has Austin and Mexico, which is a little interesting. Austin is a sprint weekend, so you'll have some big scores there. But obviously, like a lot of teams and assets will be more expensive, so it might be a little bit harder for those teams to rise in price and stuff like that as well. And then you've got Mexico, which should be okay. There's some overtaking ability in Mexico. And then Qatar, you've got Brazil with the sprint and Las Vegas with plenty of overtakes. However, that's the second to last race of the season. So you're playing your Limitless chip that late in the day. That is pretty interesting. However, you would have like a sprint and one of the heaviest overtaking tracks in the grid to kind of boost up your pre-Limitless squad. So Miami and Belgium, first half of the year, those are the kind of Limitless options if you're looking to do it on a sprint weekend. However, for the low overtake tracks, and Adam from FanAmp, the fantasy formula, has a great graphic here, or not here, but he has a great graphic showing the number of overtakes for the last 3 seasons. This is my version of that, but it's averaged out. The tracks with the stars next to them are because they've only had 2 or 1 race. So as you can see here, in the low overtake range, we've got Saudi Arabia, Australia, Silverstone, Azerbaijan, Imola, and Monaco. So those are the kind of low overtake tracks that we are looking at here. So Saudi Arabia is this weekend. We've had Japan, we've had Bahrain. Imola here, Saudi Arabia and Miami coming up before those 2 races. So Miami being a sprint weekend, some of those scores should be boosted. So we'll have a pretty good base for some budget rising assets in Imola. Imola is also where some upgrades are supposed to come in for the teams as it kicks off the European season. Monaco, again, still has Miami in its back pocket for budget gains. And then Imola, Monaco, very hard to overtake track, the lowest on the grid. That could be a good option as well. Great Britain has Canada and Austria, so that's kind of up in the air. And then the Netherlands, or the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, has Netherlands and Monza right before it. So you also have to take into account what races are coming before these low overtake tracks to kind of boost it up, because Imola is going to be kind of a lower scoring track. But having a sprint right before it with Miami, that's going to boost up the 3 race rolling average of all of your assets. And that's really nice. And we also get to know what happened in Jeddah before we activate that chip in Imola, if we are going that route. So what I'm saying is, with the sprint weekends and the low overtake tracks, getting more information is great. And you can kind of know, like, okay, like you can use this info with the 2 races before, the 1 race before, combine that with Pat's excellent graphics that I showed you earlier in the episode, and just kind of figure out, okay, it looks like it's going to be fine. So that's why I'm leaning right now towards not playing the Limitless chip in Saudi Arabia. I want some more info. I want to see what happens in Jeddah. I kind of want to react to that with 3 free transfers. Or if everything goes okay, then Limitless in Miami, Limitless in Imola is definitely on the cards. And the final chance to play the chip is when the meta shifts. So right now, loads of teams are loaded up on Mercedes and McLaren. However, for example, say on Friday, Red Bull and Ferrari come out of nowhere. Verstappen looks on it. Leclerc and Hamilton are killing it. You've got your 5 drivers there with McLaren, Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen. You can go 2 different teams with Red Bull and Ferrari. No one is getting to that squad without a Limitless chip. No one's coming close to that squad in budget. No one's coming close to that squad with their free transfers. Right now, the only thing that can really catch people up to that is the managers who have a little bit more extra in their cost cap, and they can go straight from Mercedes to Ferrari with 1 switch, which is a fantastic switch. I wish I could get there myself. But this is like gaining the points delta that we talked about earlier in the episode. Like, yeah, no one's going to come close to that squad. So you will be gaining points on the field when the meta shifts. This happened in 2023 at Monza. I believe it was like Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull, or yeah, Ferrari and Mercedes kind of came out of nowhere and looked pretty good at Monza. And then a lot of people played their Limitless chip that weekend. And that was in a non-sprint weekend. So 2023 was a little bit of a strange season just with how heavy we were on Aston Martin and Red Bull at the beginning of the year, and then McLaren and Red Bull in the second half of the year. But yeah, you just have to watch for when the winds change in F1 Fantasy. So that is kind of the final thing for when the meta shifts. That's something else that you have to look out for. But I've been talking about it all episode. There is some fantastic content out there. Rob has put out a video. Tom's section in his Pop Pan Man F1 Fantasy YouTube channel in his team selection, that was great. Pros and cons. Adam and Zach are crushing it. Terry was even commentating on it on Twitter. He's thinking about Limitless, or his thoughts on Limitless are on X this week. Rain, at the time of this recording, Rain Fantasy has not put out his Limitless guide, but I know he's putting it out today at some point. He said that on X yesterday. But his team selection videos are always fun as well. And then, like, look at these. This is what I'm talking about. 16 minutes for Rob's Limitless guide, 20 minutes for Adam and Zach, 17 minutes for Rain. Tom is more in my ballpark there with our long-winded kind of British train of thought. I guess people don't know, but I'm actually 100% Scottish, so that's where I get my British train of thought from, and that's where Ewan comes from. But yes, all these great content creators, you need to check them out. You need to put a couple hours aside over the next couple of days. Maybe when you're watching Free Practice 1, you're like, okay, like, they're blathering on about, like, Julian Palmer's favorite type of ice cream. Like, let me put one of these guides on. So definitely get one of these on your second screen, your phone, or whatever, and watch some fantastic F1 Fantasy content. Just huge shout out to the content creators this week because they are crushing it. And I love watching the community just get riled up and like discussing Limitless chips and stuff. So I'm trying to do my small little slice in the community here. But yeah, huge shout out to all these guys. And then you've got F1 Fantasy Tools, you got F1 Fantasia Formula, you got F1 Fantasy Fuel, Pit Wall, you've got Delormain Sports. You got to check out all these guys. They are fantastic assets. There is no shortage of F1 Fantasy content going around this week before the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. But that's going to do it. Honestly, I flew through that and it's still 27 minutes long. So thank you for putting up with that. Like I said, there are timestamps in the description below. However, if you're at the outro, you've probably watched this whole episode. So I appreciate that. And if you like the channel, if you like the video, give it a like. Hit the subscribe button. Like I said, I'm going to be here. This is the last pre-recorded video of the week, but there will be a deadline live stream and a cool down room episode this weekend. So 1 hour before qualifying on Saturday night evening for me, I will be live on YouTube taking all your questions, all your last second lineup decisions. And then 1 hour after the Grand Prix on Sunday, we're going to break it all down. How did the Limitless go? Are we going to play Limitless in Miami? Are we going to play Limitless in Imola? Is the sky gonna rise tomorrow? We're gonna figure it all out. But I hope you guys enjoyed that Limitless guide. Let me know in the comments if you have any more questions, if you think I kind of had some weird logic going on there. Always happy to discuss F1 Fantasy. You can hit me up on X and TikTok at F1 Fantasy UN as well, Blue Sky as well, posting over there a little bit more these days as well. But that'll do it for the pre-recorded stuff this week. I will see you at the deadline live stream on Saturday. So once again, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.